Welcome to your Left-handed Bandit mobile paint party experience. Today's theme is going to be called April Showers. So even if you are watching this and it is not the month of April, you can name it some other clever name with showers included. But it's a reflection of dreary, rainy weather with some color. So for this, we're going to need several different things. Most of these things came with your mobile paint kits. Other things you can grab right indoors at home right now. Your paint kits should have came with 6 different vials of colors, 6 different colors. You can either work out of those direct vials or cups, or you can take that paint and pour it on a flat disposable surface such as a shoebox top, a cardboard box flap, paper plate, or anything else that is going to be flat that you can mix paint on. So you should have 6 different colors. You should have the colors white, blue, purple, red, yellow, and black. White, blue, purple, red, yellow, black. Please excuse my palette as I am currently in the process of making multiple videos. Therefore, this palette looks very, very wild. But nonetheless, you should have 6 colors either poured out or set up on something hard, flat, and disposable. With your kit, you should have gotten a napkin or a paper towel. You use that for wiping off the excess paint from your brush, as well as taking the excess water out of your paint bristles after you wash our paint brushes. And speaking of washing, you are going to need a cup of water. Again, this cup of water is very dirty. You can get some clean water. You only need about 1 inch or 2 of water in your cup for this as well. Your kit should have came with an apron. You can use that to protect yourself if you get paint on you. This is water-based paint. That paint will come out as long as you attend to it immediately. If you let it sit for a while, then it will set into your clothes and possibly may not come out. So just keep that in mind. Your kit should have came with a pre-plotted canvas. As you can see, this is mine. It should have a very similar pre-plot onto the canvas that you can utilize. And that is about it. Notice that I am using an easel. You do not have to use an easel. You can either keep your canvases flat on the table, or you can lean your canvases against something heavy and wide, such as a sauce bottle or something like a stack of textbooks. Anything that may be around your house that is wide and heavy will be able to hold your canvas up. So aside from those things, our colors, our water, our aprons, our napkins, the last thing left is our paintbrush. Your kit should have came with 2 different types of paintbrushes. They all carry different varieties. Some kits come with a sponge brush and a smaller flat brush. So this is going to be your larger brush for that kit, and this is going to be your smaller brush. Some kits come with a sponge brush and a pointer brush. This is going to be your large paintbrush. I got a cat running around here, that's why I'm laughing. This is going to be your smaller paintbrush. So 2 different paintbrushes. Some kits come with 2 flat brushes, a larger flat brush and a smaller flat brush. Regardless of your combination of brushes included with your kit, you're going to use the bigger brush for the parts that I specify and the smaller brush for the other parts that I specify. Some parts I will mostly use a small brush. Some parts to fill in bigger areas I will use the bigger brush, but I will always specify when it's time to change to what. For the course of this painting, I'm going to be using my sponge brush and a small flat brush, okay? Sponge brush, small flat brush. Again, if you have a pointer brush will work excellent as well. Some parts of this painting I will switch to a pointer brush to show you how that is. But those are all of our supplies. We are going to go ahead and jump right into the painting. I'm going to be using my sponge brush for the first half of this painting. Again, a sponge brush is a sponge, so they easily retain water and paint. So we're going to have to be very, very thorough when we're cleaning those off. So keep that in mind. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with grabbing just a touch of blue paint. What I'm going to do with that blue paint is I'm going to take a streak of paint and drag it directly across the very, very top of my canvas. So you can go back and forth a little bit like I'm currently doing, or you can grab a good amount and just go straight over the top of the canvas. So we're going to start our paint at the top of the canvas to give it a bit of a border. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with turning that brush in different directions, such as vertical, up and down, and paint vertically to create different textures and shapes and patterns. Sometimes I can turn my brush horizontally, going across, to fill in bigger areas. But for this next step, we're going to paint vertically, up and down, with our brush turned to this direction. So, grabbing some more blue paint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my brush vertically and work my way down, up and down, creating jagged edges and lines in that paint. We're going to do this intentionally so that we can create an effect that will play pretty well with this actual rain. So I'm going all the way across the top. I'm painting directly over my outline Sharpie. That outline Sharpie will hold up pretty well through this paint because it's going to bleed right through. So don't feel too nervous about painting over that Sharpie because we will be able to see it later on. So up and down brush strokes. Here and there, I'm turning my brush strokes a little bit to give me some different varieties and patterns. But the most important part is we want to make sure that we have these sharp, jagged lines dragging all the way down. And I'm bringing that pretty close, right up to about my actual umbrella. I'm going to stop it maybe about a ½ inch or right before that umbrella. I'm going to make sure I got no white gaps peeking through the top. And I'm doing this fast because this is acrylic paint that we're using. Acrylic paint usually dries within 3 to 7 minutes, depending on the conditions of your surrounding. If you have a more ventilated area, then that paint's going to dry even faster. I am not in a well-ventilated area right now, but my paint is still drying pretty fast just because I'm continuously painting brush strokes. So keep that in mind. If I speed up, it's not because I'm trying to speed you along, but because we need this paint to blend properly. So I got a nice pretty layer of blue paint kind of trickling down. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to continue to use this same paintbrush, except I'm going to wipe the excess paint off of my sponge brush onto the paper towel. Again, I am not dipping my paint in water right now. That's going to make me retain a bunch of water. I'm going to have to do a lot of cleaning. But for now, just take that paintbrush or that foam brush. And if yours does not have a foam brush, you are using your larger brush for this. You can do the exact same thing with those larger brushes. And you're going to wipe that excess paint off of your paintbrush onto your paper towel. We're going to switch to the color white with some blue still on our sponge brush, which is fine. We want that. That white, when we begin to touch this to the canvas, it's going to lighten up. It's going to create a lighter blue. It's going to blend for us well. We're going to fill in the shape behind the umbrella. So I'm going to work my way over the umbrella and on the sides above this horizon line. So we are not painting below that horizon line. We are painting that space above the horizon line behind that umbrella. We're going to mix this Carolina light blue with this white. It's going to automatically blend in, create a lighter tone. We can grab more white if we need to. Try your best to stay out of your umbrella shape. However, if you do go in your umbrella shape just a little bit, it is not the end of the world. And you can always paint that and cover that up once that's dry. Acrylic paint is a very forgiving medium. We can easily cover up any mistakes that we make with more paint. The only thing is you got to make sure that that paint is actually dry. So I'm going in, I'm kind of curving along, working with this umbrella shape to kind of block my way to not go inside that shape. I'm going up and down, same way we did with that darker blue. I am turning my brush in different directions between horizontal and vertical. For most of this, I'm going vertical up and down because that is allowing those skinny lines to make their presence onto my canvas. I'm going to continue that, going all the way down. Some areas may appear a bit more vibrant with white, and some may be a bit more dim. We want a nice variety. We don't want to create one monotone of color with these things. We want to be able to see the difference between things like that darker blue and that lighter blue. And in a second, on our next step, we're going to go even darker at the top to create a nice gradient blend as well. So keep on going, keep on playing with the direction of your brush. And when we are done with this section, then we're going to take our value just a little bit deeper on our blue. So fill in those sides. Notice that my color is just automatically at light blue now, which is fine. But to make sure I got those sharp, jagged lines kind of carrying our way to the top, that's creating a bit of a wet texture. That's what we want for this piece. That's what we want for the painting. And I'm going to fill in that last piece towards the bottom right of the umbrella and fill that in with that light blue paint as well. Above the horizon line, and we get a nice blend going. Take a second to adjust any areas that you need to adjust, because in a second, we're going to take our colors just a bit darker by adding some black to this blue. So I've adjusted my areas. I got some areas it's a little bit harder to see on camera, but in person it's more visible. Different little areas trickled about on these jagged spikes are a bit more vibrant than others because some I press a little bit harder, some I press a little bit lighter. But regardless, you want to make sure that this is to your liking before you continue to the next step. For this next step, I'm going to be taking my paintbrush. I'm wiping the excess paint off of my paintbrush onto my paper towel. I am not dipping my paintbrush in water for this next step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carry a darker blend at the top. My blue is a tad bit wet, but I'm going to have to add a little bit more to get this to blend properly. So lightly tap your canvas, and if you notice that your blue is dry, then you're going to definitely need to add more blue paint. If you use the excess amount of blue, which is fine, then yours is probably still wet, and this is going to work a little bit easier for you. But mine is pretty dry to the touch. So the first thing I'm going to add is more blue paint. And I'm only doing this right at the very, very top, about an inch off the top. It's harder to see on canvas. In person, you will be able to see the difference between the dry blue paint and the wet blue paint. The wet paint is just a little bit lighter than the dry. So I have about an inch border from the top. You can faintly see it on the camera. And it's kind of working its way directly across. What I'm going to do next is wipe that excess regular blue paint off of my paintbrush onto my paper towel. I'm going to grab just a very, very, very small bit. You do not need a lot of black paint. A very small bit of black paint for this next step. Notice how much paint that I have on my brush. You do not need any more than that. That may even be just a bit too much. You might want to watch this before you do this, or you can pause this and practice it however you need to. That's the convenience of the video. But before you do this, watch this step. I'm taking a little bit of black paint and I'm doing the exact same thing, going all the way across the top. If you run out of black paint, grab a little bit more, but don't grab a whole bunch. And now I have black paint at the very, very top edge of my canvas. Now we want to not leave it like that, but blend it. So by lightly wisping that paint down, we're going to create a very similar effect. But our color is going to go from a darker navy blue to more of a Carolina blue to a light blue. I'm trying my best to make it as even as I can, but however, if you are noticing that yours is not even, it's not the end of the world. It may even create a bit of a nice effect depending on how you are doing your piece. So notice I have a very, very dramatic edge on that darker paint as opposed to that original Carolina blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe the excess paint off of my paintbrush once again, getting as much of that dark paint off as I can. I'm not dipping it in water just yet. I'm going to go back into that regular bright Carolina blue that I started with, and I'm going to meet right at the edge where these two colors meet. I'm just going to softly blend them just a little bit more so that there's a smoother transition on the colors. Sponge brushes are very, very good for things like these. If you are using a regular flat brush, it does the exact same thing. May take you a teeny bit longer just because the sponge brushes, this is about an inch or a half inch width on it. So it covers a little bit more space and more ground quickly. So that is the background to our sky, all ready for us to go after our break in a little while. The next thing we want to do is fill in this bottom area of our canvas. So what we're going to do is we're going to completely clean off this sponge brush. We're going to take our sponge brush, we're going to dip it in our water, we're going to lightly touch the sponge brush to the bottom of the cup. We're not going to bang it against the bottom. That's how we ruin our bristles. And then we're going to tap that brush on the edge of the cup. Then I'm going to take my napkin or paper towel. This is very, very important. You are going to dab both sides as many times as you need to take that excess water out of your sponge brush. This is a sponge brush, so that means it's a sponge, which means that if you do not get all of the water out of your bristles, it will drain down your canvas. And we don't want that. So, once you have your sponge brush nice and clean, there may still be a little bit of residue from that blue on there. That's not going to kill us, but we're going to get ready to move to the next step of this. For this next step, if you are using the flat brushes, then you are going to want to be able to kind of work your way throughout this bottom by covering a bit more area, because again, these sponge brushes are much wider than a regular flat brush, so I'm going to be able to finish this a bit faster with a sponge brush. So with a cleanish brush, I'm going to jump around all my different colors, and I'm going to do this fast because I don't want these colors to dry up on me. This is acrylic paint, dries really fast, as I mentioned. I'm going to start with the color red. With my red paint, I'm going to choose 3 areas in the bottom half of this canvas directly underneath that umbrella and fill in 3 horizontal, which is left to right across strokes of red paint. Super random, does not need to be in a specific area. You can do them exactly where I'm doing them, or you can kind of choose different areas. So I'm going to take some red, add 1 streak of red here, just like that. I'm going to choose my second area, and I'm going to add a second streak of red right down here. Again, these are super random. They do not have to be in the exact same spots as my red. Here's my third streak of red right over here. And I'm going to jump to my next color. So I'm moving fast because we want these colors to blend properly. So I got 3 streaks of red, rinsing my brush off. I'm going to tap it on the side of my cup. I'm going to dab both sides off of my paper towel or squeeze them onto the paper towel. Just make sure you get it as clean as you can. Keep time as a factor in your mind for these to appropriately blend. But if we're doing this and your canvas dries up, it is not the end of the world. You're just going to have to grab some more paint. I am switching to the color yellow. I am going to choose 3 more areas. They can either be directly next to my red or they can be away from it. It does not make a difference. I have 1 streak of yellow. I'm going to come right around here. I'm going to add a second streak of yellow. I'm going to come right over here to the left and add a 3rd streak of yellow. Super, super random. Not making a huge deal about this at all. Again, I know I'm moving fast, but feel free to pause this video if you need to, rewind if you need to. I'm switching my colors again, so that means I am rinsing off my paintbrush, getting all that excess water out of the bristles. Making sure I'm dabbing both sides off on my paper towel. Even if I have a little bit of residue from the previous color left over, that's okay. The important thing is get all that excess paint out of your sponge brush. I'm going to switch to the color blue. I'm going to take some blue, because we got a lot of blue in our upwards part of our painting. I'm going to add just a little less blue in this section. So I'm going to take shorter brush strokes. So 1, 2, I'm going to come over here, add a 3rd. So we got 3 streaks of blue, a little bit shorter than the other ones. I'm going to wipe this excess paint off, rinse it in water, get the brush nice and clean. We're going to add the color purple next. Purple is going to be the last color that we add before we start blending these colors together. So I've just rinsed off my brush. I'm getting the excess water out of my paint bristles so that it's clean-ish and ready to go. So I'm going to get my purple. With that purple paint, I'm going to choose 3 areas. 1, 2, and 3. So I got 3 areas of purple. Actually, I'm gonna do 4 just because I got a little bit more room over here. So I got my blends of paints going. They're still pretty wet. I am going to retire this sponge brush. It's getting to be a bit too cluttered with paint, at least on my end. If your sponge brush is ready to go, I encourage you to keep using it if you like. For this next step, I'm going to switch to my small flat. Again, for this step, you can use a small flat. You can use a sponge brush, or you can use a large flat for this part. There's 3 different brushes you can use. If you have a pointer, I encourage you not to use that for this particular part. However, you can though. But I'm going to use my small flat. And what I'm going to do, my flat is nice and clean. I'm going to grab some white paint, and I'm going to use white paint to merge all these colors together so that we have a nice blend, rainbow blend of all these colors. And the way to do that is with this white paint. So I'm grabbing a little bit of white paint at a time. You can grab more in a second. I'm going to move with a horizontal brush stroke pattern and merge these colors together. You can watch this a few times or watch me first before you start. It does not matter what part of the canvas that you start on. It just matters that you are using white paint. You are painting side to side, working in between your colors. And then when you see them start to blend together, kind of ease off and take it to another part of the painting, because the goal is not to have one new monotone of all these colors mixed together that's going to look like mud, like a brown mud color. You want to be able to see the differences in your yellows. You want to be able to see the differences in the yellows to the pinks or the purples that are going to blend into this. So you want to see a nice rainbow effect of colors, and the best way to get that, mixing white paint in, going side to side, allowing your brush to do all the work. You do not have to do too much aside from working in those spaces with that white paint. The paintbrush should do all the work for you. Remember, do not blend too much. Look at the rainbow effect that I'm starting to get. And everyone's is going to look different. So if you're doing this painting with a friend, a loved one, or a neighbor, then yours is going to look completely different from theirs, because there's just no way for us to replicate the exact same pattern on any other canvas. It's just impossible. So I'm continuing to fill in these areas, these gaps, using that white paint to merge things together. I'm being careful not to create one new super color. I'm being careful so I make sure that I'm going side to side versus up and down. That side to side brushstroke pattern also helps with the effect of creating water as well. So that's why it's important for us to go side to side. This is water that we are currently painting, more so puddles that have collected from all this rain. So it's a bit of a creative, colorful take on rain. I'm gonna get right to that horizon line. You can paint right over that horizon line, and you can make sure that you're going side to side, painting over that horizon line. If you go inside your umbrella just a little bit, it's not the end of the world. We're getting ready to paint that in just a second anyways. But you want to make sure you do this to your liking. I'm going to keep it just like this for now. And in a little while, towards the end of my painting, if I want to add in more colors, I can feel free to do that. But for right now, I'm liking this effect. I may add just a couple more quick little brush strokes to kind of fill it in. But I don't want to overdo it, because I'm going to start to merge my colors together in a way that won't be as ideal. So once you got it to your liking, it's important for you to take a step back, take a break, and let that dry. And you can always add more colors in later. So the next thing that we're going to do, which is going to be the last thing before we let this painting dry for a break, I'm going to take this same paintbrush. I'm going to use it again for the next step. I'm going to rinse this paintbrush off in water, get it nice and clean. Tap your paintbrush on the side of your cup, dab both sides off on your paper towel to get the excess water out of the paint bristles. And from here, we're going to fill in our umbrella. So I'm going to fill in my umbrella with red paint, because it's going to contrast well against that blue paint. You can fill whatever color you like in your umbrella. If you want to mix pink in there, it's red and white. Mix that color up and add pink. If you want to mix green in the umbrella, mix up some blue and some yellow. That's going to give you your green. If you want to make gray, that's black and white. Or you can Google any color pattern that you want. Again, I'm using red. So with whatever color you're deciding to use, you're going to take your clean brush, get that color, and I'm simply going to fill in my actual umbrella. I'm going to go right against the edges of the entire umbrella shape. do my best to kind of stay in the lines at this point because we don't want to go too far out of the lines because we're going to be going into other paint colors at that point. So try your best to stay in the lines for this section. Get it completely filled in. Get the bottom, take your time with the bottom. You don't want to lose your shape too much. Get those lines and corners at the top. Once you have it all bordered out, go ahead and fill it in. Notice that as I paint the inside of this umbrella, I am painting in the direction of the umbrella itself. So I'm actually pretending as if I'm painting a real life umbrella as this was real on my canvas. I'm leaving some open areas on the inside of the umbrella because I can add some blending to that just to kind of add more dynamic to the painting, which I'll show you in just a second. So border your umbrella with whatever color, paint it on in. You can do a solid paint fill or you can leave open areas like I have right now. And with those open areas, I can wipe off the excess paint to whatever color that I'm currently using. I don't even have to dip it in water. I'm going to go straight to my white paint. And I'm going to mix in white paint to the open background area that you currently see that I left open. I'm going to mix that in there. It's going to start creating its own blend. All I'm simply doing is following the shape of the umbrella. Just kind of curving my brush just a little bit. Just making those effects on its own. I don't have to try too hard. I'm going to get it all until that's all blended. Got some pink highlights and blends towards the center that naturally made themselves present when I started blending. You can add a little bit more paint on there if you like, just to kind of make your piece pop a little bit. You can add more brush strokes of paint, of course, towards the end of the painting as well. Now, I know we move really fast on that, so if you need to rewind this video for some parts and refreshers, feel free. But believe it or not, at this current state, this painting is about 90% complete. After we take a quick break, we will come back and add more colors, add more details, and finish this painting off. So again, it's important that before you go to the second part of this video, to ensure that your canvas is completely dry to the touch so that when we start the foreground, then we don't mix and muddy our colors up. This background needs to be completely dry before we go to step 2 or part 2 of this video. So let your canvas dry and I will see you again for part 2 of this painting session.